Hi, everyone. This is Tatiana Moroz with Bitcoin Magazine, and I'm here with Azba Habib of BitPay. She is one of the attorneys that work with the company. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
So yesterday you were on a panel, and I saw it. What made you interested in practicing law in the Bitcoin space?
Sure. So I've been a payments attorney from the very beginning. That's been my passion and my interest. And I was formerly with the Federal Reserve. In fact, I was with the Federal Reserve last year when I came to this conference, and it was probably my first entree into the Bitcoin world. And I met a lot of folks and learned a lot about Bitcoin. And I'd been following it intellectually, but this was the first time I really saw it in practice. And it occurred to me that this is an entirely new value transfer system. And that's actually really exciting because we haven't seen that in decades. I mean, the last time it was credit cards, and, those are a little dated at this point. So I think seeing that and seeing the technology evolve in real time, as well as the legal landscape, which also is something you don't see happen. Laws and regulations take a lot of time to evolve, but this space, everything's very, very fast paced. So we saw the technology evolving, we saw the law evolving, and for me, I was like, as a payments lawyer, it doesn't get any better than this. So quit my gig at the Federal Reserve, jumped ship, joined a cryptocurrency exchange, did that for a while, learned an immense amount, and then recently I started with BitPay as regulatory counsel, and it's been fascinating, just very, very interesting. And I've seen a lot of the legacy payment systems in my private practice as well as with the Federal Reserve, and now kind of seeing this new system burgeoning and starting from scratch has just been an amazing experience.
Excellent. So how do you stay on top of all the changes in the regulation? What are some of the challenges that you face? I'm assuming that there are some things that are a gray area.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of it comes back down to really understanding the policy goals behind the laws and regulations, because right now a lot of them don't, on their face, apply to Bitcoin. And obviously there's a distinction between Bitcoin, the network, as well as intermediaries that are in the space. And I think a lot of it comes down to, as an intermediary in the space, where do you fall in the ecosystem? What's the closest analog to that in the traditional payment system? And then you borrow from those laws and regulations. But in the meantime, you have to recognize, okay, we're not just a regular payment processor, we're a Bitcoin payment processor. So whereas I would look at traditional payment processors and I would look at MSBs and banks and borrow from the framework that applies to them, I kind of still have to supplement that with everything that applies to an industry like this one, which is really, there's no laws and regulations. So there's a lot of self-policing, and what are the unique risks with Bitcoin and how do you address those risks? And so there's a lot of security considerations, there's a lot of fraud considerations. And so we're kind of having to build that from scratch without really having an analog to work off of. And I think that's been the most challenging part, because when you're building something from scratch and you don't really have a framework to work off of, you really have to look at what's out there and what were the policy reasons behind it, and then really build your infrastructure based on those.
What do you think about the use of Bitcoin in terms of arbitration or for smart contracts? Is that something that you've explored at all?
Not particularly at BitPay, but just being in the space, that's definitely an intellectual curiosity. I think, the beauty of Bitcoin is not so much its payment application. I'm sure you've heard that time and time again. It's really the blockchain technology, and that's your it's a value transfer system at its very core. So the potential for smart contracts, personal property, anything from deeds to cars, you name it, I think that is probably the most promising aspect of this technology, and certainly the most fascinating. As a lawyer, the idea of a self-executing contract is unreal. I've had these conversations with my colleagues in my previous jobs, and they can't even wrap their heads around it, because that immediately puts industries upon industries out of business. Notary services, deed services, any of that. It's just gone. So, the fact that you could have programmable cars that are tied to executable contracts, to where I can turn off your car based on your contract because you haven't made 3 months worth of payments, and all of that happens instantaneously without any tow truck going anywhere and any lawyers getting involved. The efficiencies alone are magnanimous. So it's fascinating.
Excellent. All right, cool. So how can people keep up with the work that you're doing and everything that you guys are doing here at BitPay?
Absolutely. We get a lot of coverage in the press, actually. So CoinDesk is a great source. We have our Twitter feed. We do blogs. So that's a great way of keeping in touch. And, obviously coming to places like this, you guys are here, and we've seen a lot of people from novices to experts come to our booth and just talk to us. And we do try to do a good job of making sure we're doing public outreach, both in terms of just, basic audiences, but also on the regulatory side.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.